Undercover CEO checks into his own hotel, stops cold when he hears a mother's desperate plea. It's 8:33 p.m. The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Celeste Hotel cast dancing shadows across Marcus Kane's face as he adjusted his carefully crafted disguise. The thick-rimmed glasses felt foreign on his nose. A plain black baseball cap pulled low over his brow. His carefully grayed beard, a month in the growing, matched the gray threaded through his usually dark hair, making him look a decade older. The off-the-rack suit hung loosely on his frame, a far cry from his usual tailored attire. But tonight, the man who had built the Grand Celeste chain on a foundation of luxury with heart wasn't here to be recognized. He was here to uncover the truth about what was happening in his flagship property. But what he couldn't possibly know was that tonight he would uncover a conspiracy that went far deeper than his hotel. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you enjoy content like this, hit that subscribe button because we have a truly special story to share with you tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. Checking in, sir? The front desk clerk's smile was practiced, perfect, and utterly cold. Marcus nodded, presenting his meticulously crafted alias's ID. The name Michael Thompson stared back from the New Jersey driver's license, backed by a complete digital footprint his team had created. He'd received the anonymous email 3 days ago. Video footage of guests being mistreated, complaints being ignored, and most disturbing of all, a scene of an elderly cancer patient being rushed out of the hotel over a payment dispute. The board had dismissed it as competitors trying to damage their reputation. Victoria Blackwood, his COO, had been particularly dismissive, calling it staged propaganda. But something about that footage had awakened old ghosts. Marcus couldn't shake the memory of his brother's final days in that children's hospital, where efficiency protocols had prioritized wealthy patients over care. The same consulting firm that had transformed that hospital, Princeton Shaw, had just been hired by Victoria to optimize his hotels. "Your room key, Mr. Thompson." The plastic card felt wrong in his hand. No VIP access, no special treatment, just another guest in a sea of faces. A commotion near the elevator caught his attention. A woman, probably in her early 40s, was speaking urgently with another front desk clerk. Her clothes were wrinkled, her eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion. "Please, there has to be something you can do," her voice cracked with desperation. "The hospital extended his treatment another week. We can't leave now." The clerk's response was robotic. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but your room is already reserved for incoming guests. Our rates for a new booking during peak season are—" "I understand that," the woman cut in, "but my son's chemotherapy, we can't just stop in the middle of—" "Perhaps you should consider one of our economy partner properties across town." Marcus felt his chest tighten. The woman, Clara Wilson, according to the reservation details he could see on the clerk's screen, clutched a hospital document in trembling hands. Behind her, a teenage boy sat in a wheelchair, his thin frame drowning in a Boston Celtics hoodie, a basketball clutched in his lap like a lifeline. The scene hit too close to home. Marcus moved toward the front desk, but before he could intervene, another voice spoke up. "I'll handle this, Dennis." A tall woman in her early 30s stepped forward, her name tag reading Sarah Mitchell, night manager. Her presence seemed to immediately calm Clara. "Let's see what we can figure out." Marcus watched as Sarah efficiently worked through the reservation system, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "It looks like we have a maintenance issue in 1507, she said carefully. "That room will be unavailable for at least a week. However, I believe we can accommodate you in a similar room at your current rate." The relief on Clara's face was palpable. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't know what this means." As Sarah helped Clara and her son to the elevator, Marcus noticed another figure watching from the shadows of the lobby. Victoria Blackwood. Her steel grouse suit, as sharp as her expression, tracked Sarah's movements with clear disapproval. She spoke quietly into her phone, and Marcus didn't need to hear the words to recognize a threat in motion. His own phone buzzed, a message from his chief of security. "Found something in the Princeton Shaw contract. You need to see this. Irregularities in the financial projections. Same pattern as 3 other luxury properties they've consulted for. All showed massive profits first year, then sold at a loss after gutting customer service." Michael Thompson's quality assessment badge opened doors, but it was his deliberately bland demeanor that made him invisible. Staff members spoke freely around him, too stressed by new protocols to notice how intently he listened, how carefully he observed. Years of running his hotel empire had taught him the art of blending in now. Dressed in his off-the-rack suit and scuffed shoes, he was just another corporate drone with a tablet and too many questions. The morning shift meeting painted a grim picture. Jessica, the housekeeping supervisor, distributed new efficiency checklists to her team, her hands trembling slightly as she spoke. "Princeton and Shaw's protocols are very specific," she announced, her voice tight. "Room turnaround times have been cut by 30%. No exceptions, no excuses." Maria, a veteran housekeeper who'd worked at the Grand Celeste for 15 years, raised her hand. "Even for medical guests? Mrs. Chen in 1242 needs extra sanitization for her immune system. Her doctor provided documentation, especially those rooms." Jessica cut in, though Michael noticed how she wouldn't meet Maria's eyes. "They're flagged as high-resource consumers now, standard service only. If they need more, they can pay for upgrades." Michael made notes on his tablet, his jaw clenching beneath his carefully maintained neutral expression. The terminology was coldly familiar. The high-research process consumers, service optimization, resource allocation. He'd seen these exact phrases before in documents from other institutions Princeton and Shaw had optimized. In the staff cafeteria, he sat alone but strategically positioned near a table of bellhops. Their conversation drifted over. "Did you see them fire Tony yesterday? 10 years of service, just like that." "What'd he do?" "Spent too long helping some old lady find her heart medication. Missed his efficiency targets 3 times this month." "That's nothing. Remember Linda from Concierge? Got written up for arranging wheelchair assistance without pre-approval. Man, ever since Victoria brought in those consultants." "Shut up, someone's coming." The group fell silent as a man in an expensive suit approached, another Princeton and Shaw consultant, judging by his badge. Michael recognized the type, young, ambitious, armed with spreadsheets and algorithms that reduced human needs to data points. Through careful observation, Michael began noticing patterns. Sarah Mitchell, the night manager who'd helped Clara, seemed to be at the center of a subtle resistance. Staff members would slip her notes during shift changes, exchange quick whispers in corners, or make peculiar marks on routine maintenance requests. He followed the trail to the engineering department, where a maintenance worker named Ray was updating work orders. Michael waited until they were alone in the cramped office, surrounded by the hum of ancient computer monitors. "Interesting system you have here," he said casually, gesturing to a cluster of rooms marked for maintenance. "Lot of issues in the East Wing lately." Ray's shoulders tensed. "Just routine stuff. Old building, you know how it is. Room 1507's been listed 3 times this month. Must be serious." "Look, Mr. Thompson." Ray turned, his voice low, eyes darting to the door. "Some things are better left alone. For everyone's sake. Like the fact that 1507 is Clara Wilson's room, the one that's supposedly under maintenance?" Ray's face paled. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do. Just like you know about 1242 and 1835 and all the other rooms mysteriously marked out of order whenever someone needs help." Before Ray could respond, a notification pinged on Michael's phone, another message from his anonymous source. "Check Princeton and Shaw implementation reports from 201522020. Pattern matches Memorial Children's Hospital. Same timeline, same terminology. Deaths followed." The message hit him like a physical blow. Memorial Children's Hospital. He remembered those sterile halls, those cold protocols that had prioritized profits over his brother's care. Now, the same consulting firm was here, implementing the same system. He spent the afternoon in the business center, using his consultant access to dig deeper. Princeton and Shaw had optimized dozens of institutions across the country, hospitals, hotels, nursing homes. The pattern was always the same: slash services, boost short-term profits, then move on before the human cost became apparent. But something else caught his attention. Victoria Blackwood's name appeared in their client list repeatedly. Every property she managed eventually hired Princeton Shaw, followed their protocols, showed massive short-term gains, and then sold at a loss months later. As evening approached, Michael made his way to the security office. His quality assessment badge got him past the first checkpoint, but he needed more. Spotting a young guard watching monitors, he made his move. "Rough shift?" Michael asked, noting the coffee cups littering the desk. "You have no idea," the guard sighed. "These new protocols have us watching everything, writing up staff for spending too long with guests, documenting efficiency violations. It's not what I signed up for. Must generate a lot of paperwork. Files upon files. Victoria wants everything documented." The guard gestured to a cabinet behind him. "Got 3 months of incident reports right there. Mind if I take a look? Part of my assessment." The guard shrugged, turning back to his monitors. "Knock yourself out." The incident reports told a story, one of systematic dismantling of human dignity in pursuit of profit. Every small kindness was documented as a violation, every moment of compassion marked as inefficiency. But between the lines, Michael found something else, a pattern of rooms being marked for maintenance, power issues, plumbing problems, all coinciding with guests in desperate situations. Someone had created a shadow system of mercy within Princeton and Shaw's cold machinery, and based on the timing of these incidents, Sarah Mitchell was at the center of it. As Michael left the security office, his phone buzzed again. This time, the message made his blood run cold. "P&S meeting tonight. Grand Suite 2211 p.m. Financial transfer scheduled. Watch for proof." He checked his watch, 8:45 p.m. He had just over 2 hours to prepare. But first, he needed to understand exactly what Sarah was doing and how she was doing it. Because something told him that tonight, everything would change. The Grand Celeste's elegant hallways felt different in the growing darkness. Behind the marble and crystal, shadows were deepening. And somewhere in this beautiful prison of luxury, a network of compassion was fighting back against the machinery of greed. Michael straightened his cheap tie, adjusted his glasses, and headed for the night manager's office. It was time to find out exactly what Sarah Mitchell knew about Princeton Shaw, and more importantly, what they knew about her. The night shift at the Grand Celeste brought a different energy. Like a theater after the audience leaves, the hotel's pristine facade softened, revealing the machinery beneath. Michael Thompson moved through the quiet corridors, his quality assessment badge catching the dim light, watching as Sarah Mitchell's secret network came alive. It started subtly, a room service waiter accidentally delivering extra meals to rooms marked for maintenance, a housekeeper leaving additional medical supplies during turn-down service. Each small act of rebellion against Princeton Shaw's protocols was like a quiet note in an underground symphony. At 9:30 p.m., everything changed. The call came through the house phone near the lobby. Room 1507. Clara's son had taken a turn for the worse. Michael watched from behind a marble column as Sarah burst into action, her efficiency haunting in its precision. She'd done this before. "I need medical support in 1507. She spoke quietly into her radio, carefully avoiding the main security channel. Code Sunrise. Within minutes, the Grand Celeste's hidden resistance emerged. Ray from maintenance redirected security cameras. A concierge named David appeared with a wheelchair. The kitchen sent up hot soup and fresh towels, all technically against protocols, all delivered with quiet determination. Victoria Blackwood materialized like a shark scenting blood, her heels clicking against marble as she approached the growing commotion. "Ms. Mitchell," her voice cut through the hushed activity, "what exactly is happening here?" Sarah stood her ground. "Medical emergency, ma'am. Standard response procedures." "There are no standard response procedures anymore." Victoria consulted her tablet. "Princeton Shaw's protocols are very clear. Medical emergencies are to be referred to external services. The hotel assumes no responsibility." A cry of pain from inside the room interrupted her. Clara's voice, desperate. "Please, he can't breathe." Michael's hands clenched. Every instinct screamed to intervene, to reveal himself and end this madness. But he forced himself to wait, to watch. There was too much at stake. Sarah didn't hesitate. "Call an ambulance," she ordered David, "and bring up the emergency oxygen from the pool area." "The equipment is for liability-covered pool emergencies only." Victoria's voice turned to ice. "Ms. Mitchell, you're deliberately violating—" "Then fire me," Sarah's quiet words carried through the hushed corridor. "Fire me right now, because I'm not stopping." The standoff crackled with tension. Around them, staff members frozen in tableau, waiting to see which way the wind would blow. Victoria's perfectly manicured nails tapped her tablet screen. "Oh, I'll do more than fire you," she smiled, all teeth and threat. "Security, please escort Miss Mitchell to my office and clear these unauthorized personnel from the area." As security approached, Michael noticed something interesting. The guards moved slowly, reluctantly. One of them quietly pressed something into Sarah's hand as they led her away, a key card maybe, or a note. The resistance ran deeper than he'd thought. His phone buzzed. Another message from his anonymous source. "Check maintenance room B3 hidden. Files. Proof of everything. Get them before Victoria does." Michael waited until Victoria disappeared into her office with Sarah, then slipped away from the crowd still gathered near Clara's room. The service elevator required his quality assessment badge and a maintenance code, but he'd watched Ray input the numbers earlier. 4, 7, 2, 1. The basement beckoned. Maintenance room B3 was really more of a storage closet, cramped and musty. Michael's flashlight beam revealed shelves of cleaning supplies, old uniforms, broken equipment. Nothing obvious. But as he ran his hands along the shelves, he felt it. A loose panel in the back wall. Behind it, a thumb drive and a stack of documents. Photocopied emails, financial records, internal memos. His hands shook as he read through them. This wasn't just about the Grand Celeste. This was evidence of a systematic conspiracy across multiple properties. Princeton Shaw's optimization program was a calculated scheme to strip assets, inflate short-term profits, and abandon properties once the human cost became too obvious to ignore. And Victoria Blackwood was their star player. A noise in the hallway made him freeze. Footsteps getting closer. Michael quickly photographed the key documents with his phone, then replaced everything exactly as he'd found it. He killed his flashlight just as voices became audible outside. "Search everything," Victoria's voice commanded. "That little bleeding heart has evidence hidden somewhere. Find it." Michael pressed himself into a corner as flashlight beams swept under the door. His phone buzzed silently in his pocket, probably another message from his source, but he didn't dare move to check it. "What about the maintenance level?" a male voice asked. "Every room," Victoria ordered. "And post guards at all exits. No one leaves until—" A commotion upstairs interrupted her. Even through the floor they could hear raised voices, rushing footsteps. Someone shouted for medical assistance. "Ma'am," a guard's radio crackled. "Situation in 1507. The boy's condition is critical. Paramedics are requesting hotel medical supplies." Victoria's exasperated sigh was audible through the door. "Deny them access. We're not liable." "No, I have the transcript," I said. My voice cut in. Younger, male, professional. "The Princeton Shaw representatives are waiting in 2200. They're asking about the financial reports." A moment of silence. Michael could almost hear Victoria's mind calculating priorities. "Secure this level," she finally ordered. "No one in or out. I'll deal with Sarah Mitchell and her evidence later. Right now, we have more important matters to handle." The footsteps retreated. Michael waited 5 full minutes before slowly opening the door. The hallway was empty, but he could hear guards at both ends of the corridor. He was trapped. Unless... He pulled out his phone, finally checking that last message. What he read made his heart race. EP&S meeting starting early, bringing signed contracts. Victoria getting 30% of stripped assets after sale. Proof in Grand Suite 2200. But hurry, once they sign, it's over. Michael looked at his watch. 10:47 p.m. The evidence he needed was 15 floors above him, but he was trapped in a basement with guards at every exit. And somewhere upstairs, a young boy's life hung in the balance while corporate vultures decided his fate. Sarah was right. Someone had to stop this, and as he studied the service elevator shaft, an idea began to form. Because sometimes the only way out was up. The night was far from over at the Grand Celeste Hotel, and Michael Thompson, or whoever he really was, had decisions to make. The service elevator shaft stretched above Michael like a metal canyon, emergency lights casting strange shadows on its walls. He'd used his consultant's badge to override the elevator's lockdown, sending it up to the 20th floor as a diversion. Now, with the guards distracted, he faced the maintenance ladder. 15 floors up, no safety harness. One wrong move and his phone buzzed again. Sarah in trouble. Victoria's men found more files, taking her to basement security office. Michael glanced between the ladder and the dimly lit corridor. Up or down? The evidence he needed was above, but Sarah and possibly proof of the larger conspiracy was below. The choice was made for him when he heard voices approaching from both ends of the hallway. "Check every room again," a guard commanded. "Miss Blackwood wants this place stripped clean." The ladder it was. 3 floors up, his arms already burning, Michael heard commotion above. Security radios crackled with updates. Clara's son had been moved to the hospital, but something was happening in the grand suite. The Princeton and Shaw meeting was turning tense, demanding full documentation. Fragments of radio chatter reached him. "Ms. Blackwood insisting, board meeting tomorrow morning." His phone vibrated against his chest. Clinging to the ladder with one hand, he risked checking it. "Area destroying records right now, suite 2200. Hurrying to finish before board meeting." Sarah broke free, trying to reach media with backup files. 6 floors up, he found a maintenance alcove and paused to catch his breath. The hotel's ventilation system hummed around him, and through a small access panel he could see into a service corridor. 2 Princeton and Shaw consultants hurried past, their voices sharp with anxiety. "The numbers don't match," one hissed. "If the board sees these discrepancies..." "Victoria promised she had it handled," the other cut in. "She's cleaning up loose ends now." "And the night manager?" "Being dealt with." Michael's grip tightened on the ladder. The pieces were falling into place. Tomorrow's board meeting wasn't just about quarterly reviews. It was Victoria's endgame. Once she presented doctored numbers and eliminated evidence of her kickbacks, the hotel's fate would be sealed. Unless someone stopped her. 9 floors up, his suit soaked with sweat, Michael heard screaming, not from above or below, but through the walls. A guest was arguing with security. "My son needs his medication," Clara's voice. "It's still in the room." "Ma'am, the room is sealed pending investigation." "Investigation of what? What's happening to this hotel?" What indeed, Michael thought grimly. The Grand Celeste had been his family's legacy, a symbol of true hospitality. Now it was becoming exactly what he'd built it to fight against. 12 floors, his muscles screamed in protest. Below, he could hear security teams searching floor by floor. Above, the low murmur of voices from suite 2200 grew clearer. Victoria was speaking, her tone unusually strained. "Shred everything. The board arrives at 8 a.m. By then, Sarah Mitchell will be gone, her evidence discredited, and this hotel's future secure." "And the CEO?" a male voice asked. "Our sources say Kane's been asking questions." "Marcus Kane is a relic," Victoria scoffed. "Too busy chasing his brother's ghost to see what's happening in his own hotel. By the time he realizes, it'll be too late." 14 floors, almost there. Michael's phone buzzed one final time. Sarah reached media. Story breaking in 30 minutes. Victoria on warpath. Armed security heading to 2200, destroying everything. Through the access panel, he could see dark shapes moving in the corridor. Armed guards, just as the message warned. Victoria was taking no chances. 15 floors. Michael reached the top of the shaft, his heart pounding. Through the ventilation grate, he could see into suite 2000. 200 Victoria stood by an antique desk, feeding documents into a shredder. 2 Princeton and Shaw executives paced nervously, while a third typed frantically on a laptop. "The offshore accounts are clear," the typist announced. "No trace of the transfers." "Good," Victoria straightened, smoothing her blazer. "Have security do one final sweep. No one gets in or out until..." The hotel's fire alarm exploded to life. Red emergency lights flooded the corridor. Through the chaos of sirens and shouts, Michael heard Victoria swear. "It's Mitchell. She's trying to force an evacuation. Get those documents finished now." As security rushed to respond to the alarm, Michael saw his chance. The ventilation grate was old, its screws loose from years of vibration, one solid kick. But before he could move, the suite's door burst open. Sarah Mitchell stood there, blood trickling from a cut above her eye, a security guard's radio in her hand. "It's over, Victoria," she announced. "The media has everything: emails, financial records, witness statements. In 10 minutes, the whole world will know what you've done." Victoria's laugh was cold. "You think I won't survive a few news stories? I've built my career on handling crises like you." "This isn't about survival," Sarah replied. "This is about justice. For every patient you turned away, every family you destroyed, every life your protocols ruined." "You stupid, sentimental fool." Victoria reached for her phone. "Security." The ventilation grate crashed to the floor. Michael dropped into the suite, his cheap suit torn and disheveled. Security guards raised their weapons as Victoria spun around. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, instinctively moving to cover the shredder. "I think," Michael said quietly, "we all need to have a conversation about Princeton and Shaw." The Grand Suite's antique clock ticked heavily in the silence. Michael stood by the shattered ventilation grate, his cheap suit covered in dust from the maintenance shaft. Security guards kept their weapons trained on both him and Sarah, awaiting Victoria's orders. Victoria recovered from her initial shock, her smile turning razor-sharp. "A quality assessment consultant who breaks in through ventilation shafts. How unusual?" She gestured to the guards. "Remove them both, and their evidence." "About that evidence," Michael's voice remained steady, "and about tomorrow's board meeting, I don't think either is going quite the way you planned." Victoria's smile didn't waver. "Because of this little break-in drama?" She gestured dismissively at both Michael and Sarah. "A consultant playing spy and a troublemaking night manager? Don't make me laugh. The board won't believe." "The board won't have to believe anything," Michael interrupted, pulling out his phone. "They'll see it for themselves. Every deleted file, every doctored report, every optimization that lined your pockets while destroying people's lives." The Princeton and Shaw executives exchanged nervous glances. The one at the laptop slowly closed it, sensing the shift in the room. "You have no proof." Victoria's voice held the slightest tremor. "Don't I?" Michael tapped his phone. On cue, every screen in the suite, the TV, the laptop, even Victoria's tablet, lit up with documents. Financial records, email chains, surveillance footage. "Impossible," Victoria whispered. "We deleted everything." "Did you really think the hotel systems wouldn't keep backups? That every file you shredded wasn't already secured? That's the thing about modern luxury, Victoria. It's all digital." Sarah stepped forward, still holding the security radio. "It's not just the files, Victoria. Tell them about Memorial Children's Hospital, about what your protocols did there." But Victoria's composure cracked. "You know nothing about—" "I know everything." Michael's voice turned cold. "About Memorial, about Sterling Heights, about every institution Princeton and Shaw gutted for profit. But most importantly," he reached into his jacket, "I know about these." He pulled out a stack of papers, copies of the documents he'd found in the basement. But these weren't just financial records. They were death certificates, incident reports, lives destroyed by ruthless efficiency protocols. The Princeton and Shaw executives began edging toward the door. "Look, stay," Michael called after them. "You'll want to hear this next part." Victoria lunged for her phone, but Sarah was faster. The security radio crackled. "Attention all units, stand down. Priority override, Alpha on 7. The guards lowered their weapons immediately, recognition dawning on their faces. "Alpha 17? Victoria's laugh was brittle. "That's impossible. Only the CEO has that code, and Marcus Kane is right here." The room went silent as Michael removed his glasses, wiped away the gray makeup at his temples. Even Sarah stared, pieces finally falling into place. "No," Victoria breathed. "You can't—" "I built this hotel." Marcus Kane's voice filled the room. all pretense gone. Built it to be everything Memorial wasn't. A place where profit never came before people, where everyone deserved dignity. He turned to the Princeton and Shaw executives, now frozen by the door. Your firm destroyed my brother's hospital, turned it into a cold, calculating machine that let him die because his treatment wasn't costiful. I swore it would never happen again. Victoria found her voice. The board will never. The board is already here. The suite's doors opened. Board members filed in, led by Clara's doctor, who Marcus now recognized as the head of Memorial's former ethics committee. We've seen everything, Victoria, the doctor said quietly. Every file, every decision, every life affected. End of chapter 8. Marcus stepped forward. I could have stopped you the moment I arrived. Could have revealed myself, fired you, ended this immediately. His voice softened. But I needed to understand, needed to see how deep this went, needed to experience what our guests experienced. He turned to Sarah. And I needed to find the people who still believed in what this place stands for. Victoria's face contorted. You self-righteous fool. You think luxury can coexist with charity, that profit and compassion? That's exactly what I think, Marcus cut her off. Because I've seen it. In every employee who risked their job to help others. In every act of kindness your protocols tried to stamp out. And most importantly, he smiled slightly, in this quarter's real numbers. He gestured to the screens, now showing different financial reports. Turns out, when you don't cook the books, when you don't take kickbacks, when you actually treat people with dignity, the profits take care of themselves. Sarah's radio crackled again. Sir, Clara's son is stabilized. The hospital's requesting permission to implement your new medical support program. Victoria's last weapon, her smug certainty, crumbled. The police are waiting downstairs, Marcus informed her quietly, along with federal agents very interested in Princeton and Shaw's business practices. He turned to the board. Unless anyone objects? The board's silence was answer enough. As Victoria and the consultants were led away, Sarah approached Marcus. All this time, you were trying to save my hotel, he finished, with help from people like you who never forgot what it stood for. The fire alarm finally silenced. Dawn was breaking over the city, casting long shadows through the suite's windows. A new day was beginning at the Grand Celeste. And there was work to be done. 1 month later, the Grand Celeste's lobby sparkled in the morning light. But something was different. The cold efficiency had been replaced by a warmth that went beyond the crystal chandeliers and marble floors. At the front desk, a new sign read, All Guests Matter, the Grand Celeste Promise. Marcus Kane stood by the windows, watching his transformed hotel come to life. The disguise was long gone, but he'd kept the simple suit, a reminder of the lessons learned during his undercover days. Sarah Mitchell, now Director of Guest Relations, approached with a tablet. The new medical assistance program is officially launched, she reported. 3 families already enrolled this morning. And Clara's son? Sarah smiled. Released from hospital yesterday, they're our first official participants in the Recovery Suite program. Marcus nodded, satisfaction warming his chest. The hotel's East Wing had been converted into specially equipped recovery suites for patients receiving treatment at nearby hospitals. It was everything Princeton and Shaw had fought against, and bookings were at an all-time high. There's something else, Sarah hesitated. It's about the anonymous messages you received during your investigation. Marcus turned. Those messages had been crucial, arriving at exactly the right moments with exactly the right information. He'd always wondered, I think I know who sent them, Sarah continued. Remember how the messages always came when Victoria was about to destroy evidence or when someone needed help? You? Sarah shook her head. Follow me. They took the service elevator to the security floor. In a small office surrounded by monitors sat an elderly man, his security uniform crisp despite the early hour. Mr. Kane, he stood, smiling slightly. I wondered when you'd figure it out. Frank? Marcus stared at the head of night security, a man who'd worked at the Grand Celeste for 30 years. You were my source? Frank gestured to his monitors. I've watched this hotel every night for 3 decades. Watched your father build it into something special. Watch you continue his legacy." His smile faded. "And then I watched Victoria try to destroy it all." "But how did you know it was me, Undercover?" Frank chuckled. "Son, I knew your father. Watched you grow up running these halls. You think a cheap suit and some gray hair could fool these old eyes? Think, why didn't you say anything?" "Because you needed to see it yourself. Not just Victoria's schemes, but the people fighting back. Sarah's network, the staff's resistance, every small act of kindness they tried to stamp out." Frank's eyes grew distant. "Your father always said a hotel was more than just rooms and service. It was a sanctuary." Marcus remembered those words. They'd shaped his entire vision for the Grand Celeste. "I knew if you saw what was happening firsthand, you'd understand what needed to be done," Frank continued. "So I helped guide you to the evidence, warned you of dangers, made sure you were in the right place at the right time." Sarah spoke up. "Frank was also the one who helped me hide evidence in the maintenance room. He knew every blind spot in Victoria's security system." 30 years of watching," Frank shrugged. "You learn a few things." Marcus extended his hand. "Thank you. For everything." "Don't thank me," Frank gripped his hand firmly. "Just keep building what your father started, what you continued, what all of us fought to protect." Later that morning, Marcus stood in the new recovery wing, watching Clara's son shoot baskets in the specially designed recreation area. The boy's strength was returning, his smile brightening each day. Sarah joined him, holding more reports. The board's quarterly review came in. Profits are up 20% since Victoria's departure. Turns out compassion is good for business. "Who would have thought?" Marcus smiled. Through the windows, he could see the city stretching toward the horizon. Somewhere out there, Victoria and the Princeton and Shaw executives were facing federal investigations. Their optimization empire was crumbling as more hotels and institutions came forward with similar stories. But here in the Grand Celeste, something new was rising. Something that balanced luxury with humanity, profit with compassion. Frank's voice crackled over Sarah's radio. "Incoming guest, main entrance. Cancer patient, financial assistance needed." Marcus and Sarah exchanged looks. There was work to be done. As they headed toward the lobby, Marcus caught his reflection in a mirror. The face looking back wasn't the ruthless CEO Victoria had accused him of being, nor the undercover investigator he'd pretended to be. It was simply a man who'd remembered what mattered most. And in the end, that had made all the difference. Coming up, we've picked 2 incredible stories for you. Just click on your screen to watch. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss these. Just click to watch, and don't forget to subscribe. It would mean a lot.